The abandoned shipyard hung at the edge of council space like a forgotten graveyard. Old ships waited here to be broken down for parts. 3 massive industrial freighters sat in the main bay, covered in dust and neglect. They were ugly ships, built for carrying cargo, not for speed or beauty. Jiwon Kim walked around the first freighter, running her hand along the hull. "This one's perfect." Observer Quinta ruffled her feathers in confusion. The avian representative had been sent by the council to watch the humans work. Most of the council expected failure. Quinta was supposed to document it when it happened. "Perfect," she chirped. "These ships are scheduled for destruction. Their systems are 20 years outdated. Their hulls have micro-fractures. They barely function." "Exactly," Doyen said, climbing up a maintenance ladder. "If they were valuable, the council wouldn't let us blow them up." "Blow them up?" Quinta's feathers stood straight up. "You plan to destroy them?" "Well, hopefully the rift destroys them instead," Jiwon said. "But yeah, these ships aren't coming back." Inside the shipyard's control room, 3 more humans had already started working. Minji Choi stood in front of multiple screens showing equations and energy readings. He was muttering to himself and occasionally laughing, which Quinta found disturbing. Soman An sat at a navigation terminal, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards at once. She was reprogramming the ship's flight systems, rewriting code that had been tested and certified by the galaxy's best engineers. Taeyang Seo worked in the fabrication bay below, cutting metal plates into shapes that made no sense according to any design manual Quinta had ever seen. "I do not understand," Quinta said, watching the humans work. "What are you building?" Minjae looked up from his screens. "We're not building anything. We're unbuilding. See, everyone's been trying to stop the rift with force. Push against it. That's like trying to stop a hurricane by blowing in the opposite direction. Then what is your approach? We're going to feed it something it can't digest." Minjae pulled up an image of the void rift. "This thing eats matter and energy. It converts everything into more of itself. It's like a fire, basically. But what happens if you throw something into a fire that burns wrong? Something that makes the whole fire go out?" Quinta tilted her head. "The rift is not a fire. It is a spatial anomaly operating on quantum principles we barely understand." "Sure, but the idea is the same. It has a pattern. Patterns can be disrupted." Jiwon and Doyen entered the control room, covered in grease and dust. Doyen was still holding his coffee cup, though Quinta had no idea where he kept refilling it. "Reactors are ready for modification," Jiwon said. "Taeyang, how's the hull reinforcement going?" Taeyang's voice came through the speakers. "Almost done with the first ship. This lattice structure you designed shouldn't work. The stress points are all wrong." "It'll work," Jiwon said confidently. "Earth physics are a little different from galactic physics. We discovered some shortcuts." "Shortcuts?" Quinta asked. "Physics is not something you can shortcut." "Tell that to our ships," Doyen said with a grin. "Half our technology works because we didn't know it was supposed to be impossible. Ignorance is useful sometimes." Over the next 2 days, Quinta watched in growing amazement as the humans worked. They never stopped. They ate while working, slept in shifts, and moved with a focused energy that seemed almost frantic. But they were also constantly joking, laughing, arguing about the best way to do things. "Why are you arguing?" Quinta asked after watching Jiwon and Minjae debate heatedly about reactor configurations. "Does one of you not know the correct answer?" "We both know different answers," Jiwon explained. "I'm thinking about what's practical. Minjae's thinking about what's theoretically possible. The best solution is usually somewhere in between. But you are wasting time arguing instead of calculating the optimal solution." "Arguing is how we find the optimal solution," Minjae said. "If we both agreed immediately, one of us wouldn't be thinking hard enough." The modifications the humans made seemed random at first. But slowly, Quinta began to see the pattern. The ships weren't being upgraded. They were being turned into something else entirely, something no species had ever built before. The reactor cores were rewired to run in reverse sequence, creating an energy signature that pulsed in a specific rhythm. The hull plating was reinforced with a lattice structure that looked fragile, but was designed to flex and redirect force instead of resisting it. The navigation systems were programmed to fly in synchronized patterns that violated several safety regulations. "These ships will not be stable," Quinta observed. "One miscalculation and they will tear themselves apart." "Yep," Doyen agreed. He was testing the manual override controls. his hands moving across the pilot interface with practiced ease. That's why we're going to be piloting them manually. Can't trust computers for this kind of flying. Manual piloting? Through the void rift? That is suicide. Maybe, Doyen said. But it's also the only way this works. See, the rift disrupts all computer systems within range. Automated systems just shut down, but a human brain is messy and analog. We can keep flying even when our instruments say it's impossible. Quinta sent regular reports back to the council. She described the human methods, their strange technology, their casual attitude toward danger. She tried to explain how they were attempting something that made no sense by conventional standards. The council's response was always the same. Document everything, but prepare for failure. On the final day, the 3 freighters were ready. Jiwon had named them, painting human letters on their hulls. The tenacity, the audacity, the mendacity, what do these names mean? Quinta asked. Tenacity means stubborn determination, Jiwon explained. Audacity means bold courage, and mendacity means lying or deception. Why would you name a ship after lying? Doyen laughed. Because we're going to trick a spatial anomaly into eating itself. Seemed appropriate. The humans did final checks on their systems. They moved with calm efficiency now, all the joking set aside. This was it. In a few hours, they would either save the galaxy or die trying. Quinta approached Hyejin, who had arrived to oversee the launch. Are you certain about this? The avian asked quietly. Your people are risking everything on an approach that has never been tested. If you fail, those lives are lost for nothing. Hyejin looked at the 3 ships, then at her fellow humans preparing to board them. Quinta, do you know what humans are really good at? We're good at breaking things and then figuring out how to fix them. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We break our governments and rebuild them. We break our technology and improve it. We break our own bodies and find ways to heal them. The void rift is not something you broke. You did not cause this problem. No. But fixing things we didn't break is also kind of our specialty. Earth is full of problems we inherited from previous generations. Climate change, pollution, wars we didn't start. And we fix them anyway because that's what humans do. We don't give up just because something seems impossible. Doyen walked past, heading toward his ship. He paused next to Quinta and gave her a confident smile. Hey, don't look so worried. We've got this. How can you be so calm? Quinta asked. You are about to fly into certain death. Certain death would be staying here and waiting for the rift to reach us, Doyen said. This is just probably death. Big difference. He climbed aboard the tenacity. Jiwon boarded the audacity. Minjae took the mendacity. Somin and Taeyang remained behind in the control room, ready to provide support. The 3 ships powered up, their modified engines humming with an unusual frequency. On her screens, Quinta saw energy readings that should not be possible. Hyejin opened a communication channel to all 3 ships. Whenever you're ready. Doyen's voice came through the speakers, relaxed and steady. Tenacity to control. All systems green. Well, they're not actually green. More like orange. But orange is the new green, right? Audacity ready, Jiwon reported. Engines are holding steady. Let's go save the galaxy. Mendacity ready to lie to a spatial anomaly, Minjae added. This is either genius or the dumbest thing we've ever done. Probably both, Doyen said. The 3 ships moved out of the shipyard in perfect formation. They accelerated toward the edge of council space, toward the void rift, toward almost certain death. Quinta watched them go, her report to the council already forming in her mind, but she found herself changing the words. Instead of expected failure, she wrote unprecedented attempt. Instead of reckless humans, she wrote remarkably brave humans, because watching them work, watching them prepare, watching them fly calmly toward the impossible, Quinta had realized something. Maybe the galaxy had been thinking about the problem wrong this whole time. Maybe sometimes you needed someone who didn't know enough to be properly afraid. The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive station where thousands of alien species gathered to make decisions for the galaxy. Today the room buzzed with fear and anger. Screens showed the same terrible sight from 100 different angles. The Void Rift, they called it. A massive tear in space that ate everything it touched. Ambassador Vexthar clicked his mandibles together nervously. The insectoid being had lived for 300 years and never seen anything like this. Entire star systems had vanished into that purple-black swirl of energy. 17 solar systems gone in 3 months. Billions of lives lost. High Chancellor Mordan stood at the center podium, his reptilian scales shifting from green to gray with stress. He had called this emergency session after the latest failure. Another probe destroyed. Another brilliant plan turned to dust. "We have tried everything," Mordan said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Quantum barriers failed. Dimensional anchors failed. Temporal stasis fields failed. The rift grows larger every day. At this rate, it will reach the core worlds in 6 months." Dr. Pelcross floated forward, his energy-based form flickering with distress. "My team attempted to create a counter-frequency. The rift simply absorbed it and grew stronger. This anomaly operates outside known physics. It generates antimatter waves that dissolve anything within 10 light years. We cannot even get close enough to study it properly." Around the chamber, representatives from 1,000 worlds shifted in their seats. Some had lost colonies already. Others knew their homeworlds would be next. The greatest minds in the galaxy had spent 3 months searching for answers. They had found nothing but failure. A delegate from the crystalline collective stood, her body chiming like broken glass. "Perhaps we should evacuate the affected sectors. Save who we can and abandon the rest." "Unacceptable," roared a delegate from the Ursinian Commonwealth. "We do not abandon our people. We find a solution." "What solution?" Pelcross asked quietly. "We have exhausted every known approach. Our technology cannot stop this." The chamber erupted in arguments. Species blamed each other. Scientists defended their failed attempts. Politicians demanded action while offering no ideas. The fear in the room was thick enough to taste. The doors at the back of the chamber suddenly opened. Every being turned to look. 3 humans walked in, looking completely out of place. They wore simple uniforms, not the formal robes most delegates preferred. One of them, a woman named Heejin Lee, carried a datapad. A man named Doyen Park held a cup of coffee in one hand and a large equipment case in the other. The third human, Jiwon Kim, was eating something from a wrapper. "Sorry we're late," Heejin said calmly. "Traffic was terrible." Mordan's scales flashed red with anger. "The Galactic Council is discussing an extinction-level crisis, and you bring food and beverages?" Doyen took a sip of his coffee. "Well, yeah. It's going to be a long day." He set down his case and started unpacking holographic equipment. Vexthar leaned forward, his compound eyes studying the humans. These creatures had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were primitives compared to civilizations millions of years old. What were they even doing here? Jiwon finished whatever she was eating and crumpled the wrapper into her pocket. "We heard you've been having some trouble with that rift thing." "Trouble?" Dr. Pelcross's energy form pulsed with disbelief. "It is destroying the galaxy, and you speak of it like a minor inconvenience." "Well, it is inconvenient," Jiwon said, setting up a holographic display. "But it's not unsolvable." The chamber went silent. Then the silence exploded into outrage. "How dare you?" A delegate threw its appendages in the air. "We have worked for 3 months. Our greatest scientists have failed. And you think you can solve it?" Doyen looked up from his equipment. "I mean, yeah, that's kind of why we came." He said it so casually, like he was talking about fixing a broken door instead of saving the galaxy. Mordan slammed his clawed hand on the podium. "Your species barely understands quantum mechanics. You have no advanced shielding technology. Your ships still use chemical propulsion in some sectors. And you think you can succeed where ancient civilizations have failed?" Heejin stepped forward, completely calm despite the anger directed at her. "With respect, Chancellor, yes. We do. This is insulting." Vexthar clicked his mandibles rapidly. "We have lost billions of lives while searching for answers. You show up late with coffee and claim you can fix everything? This is not a game." "We know it's not a game," Jiwon said quietly. Her casual manner disappeared, replaced by something harder. "We've been studying your data for the past week. We've read every report, every failed experiment, every theory, and we think we know what went wrong." "What went wrong?" Pelcross floated closer. "Please enlighten us. What did 1,000,000 scientists miss that 3 humans found?" Doyen pulled up a hologram of the Void Rift. "You kept trying to stop it. Contain it. Fight it directly. That's not going to work." "Obviously," someone shouted from the back. "Because it is impossible." "No," Heejin said firmly. "Because you're approaching it wrong. You're thinking about the rift like an enemy to defeat. We think about it like a problem to solve. And every problem has a solution if you're willing to get creative." Morden's scales shifted through several colors: anger, confusion, curiosity. What do you propose? G1 brought up technical diagrams. We need 72 hours, and we need 3 of those old industrial freighters you were going to scrap. The ones in Shipyard 7. Those ships are obsolete, Vexthar protested. They are being decommissioned because they are outdated and unsafe. Perfect, Doyen said with a slight smile. We don't need safe. We need expendable. The council members looked at each other. Some thought the humans were insane. Others thought they were arrogant fools. But several delegates saw something else in the humans' eyes. Confidence. Not the blind confidence of ignorance, but the steady confidence of people who had already figured something out. Mordan studied the 3 humans for a long moment. The galaxy was dying. Every conventional approach had failed. What did they have to lose by trying something unconventional? 72 hours, he said finally. You may have your ships, but if you fail, you will have wasted time we do not have. Yijin nodded. We understand the stakes, Chancellor. We won't fail. How can you be so certain? Pelcross asked. Doyen picked up his coffee cup and his equipment case. He looked at the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds, all watching him with doubt and fear and desperate hope. Relax, he said simply. We've got this. Then the 3 humans walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of beings who didn't know whether to hope or despair. In the history of the galaxy, no one had ever spoken with such casual confidence about an impossible task. But then again, the galaxy had never really understood humans before. The observation ship hung in space 10 light-years from the Void Rift, surrounded by hundreds of council vessels. Every species in the galaxy had sent representatives to watch. Some came hoping to witness a miracle. Most came expecting to document a tragedy. Hyejin Lee stood on the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the screens showing the 3 human ships. They were small dots against the vast darkness, moving steadily toward the purple-black swirl of the rift. High Chancellor Mordan stood beside her, his reptilian features tense. They are still maintaining formation. Impressive discipline, at least. They're good at what they do, Hyejin said quietly. On screens across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. News feeds carried the live transmission to thousands of worlds. Children stopped playing to look at the sky. Workers paused at their stations. Even criminals stopped their crimes to watch 3 humans fly toward certain death. Inside the tenacity, Doyen Park checked his instruments for the 100th time. The readouts were already starting to fluctuate as they approached the rift's outer boundary. This was where every other ship had been destroyed. The antimatter waves hit like invisible hammers, dissolving hulls instantly. Tenacity to audacity and mendacity, he said into his communicator, starting to feel some turbulence. Everyone ready? Ready as we'll ever be, Jiwan's voice came through. Inside the Audacity, she was monitoring the energy shields. The modifications they had made were holding, but this was about to be the real test. Mendacity ready, Minjay reported. His screens showed energy readings that made no sense. The rift was not just destroying matter. It was unmaking reality itself. Readings are getting weird. Really weird. Like physics is crying weird. Physics can cry about it later, Doyen said. Pattern Delta 7 on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The 3 ships suddenly broke formation, spiraling around each other in a complex dance. To the observers watching from safety, it looked like chaos. Ships spinning and diving in patterns that violated every principle of safe flying. But it was not chaos. It was precision. Ambassador Vexthar leaned forward in the observation ship, his compound eyes trying to track the movement. What are they doing? Those maneuvers are insane. They're redirecting the antimatter waves, Dr. Pelcross said, his energy form flickering with excitement. Look at the shields! They're not resisting the force. They're channeling it, using it to protect themselves. The 3 human ships hit the outer boundary of the rift, the zone where 17 previous expeditions had been instantly destroyed. The purple-black energy crashed against their hulls like an ocean wave. The ships did not explode. They did not dissolve. They pushed through. On 1,000 worlds, beings gasped. In the Council observation ship, Mordan's scales shifted through colors so fast they became a blur. Impossible, he whispered. They survived the boundary. Inside the rift, Doyen felt his stomach trying to escape through his throat. The ship bucked and twisted as reality bent around them. His instruments were flickering, showing readings that contradicted each other from one second to the next. Okay, he said. gripping the controls tighter. This is significantly worse than I expected. How's everyone doing? Audacity holding together, Jiwan reported. Her voice was tight with concentration, but I've got warning lights everywhere. Engine 3 is overheating. Shield generators are at 140% of rated capacity. That's impossible, Minjae said. They can't run at 140%. Well, they are. I'll worry about why later. Minji checked his own systems. Mendacity is stable. Well, stable is a strong word. Let's say we're falling apart at an acceptable rate. The three ships dove deeper into the rift. Around them, space itself seemed to scream. Colors existed that should not be possible. Distances measured wrong. Time felt thick and thin at the same time. Doyen's training took over. Years of flying ships in Earth's atmosphere, where weather could kill you in seconds if you made a mistake. Years of trusting his instincts over his instruments. He flew by feel, by intuition, by some sense that he could not name but had learned to trust. Coming up on the second boundary, he announced, this is where things get really fun. I hate your definition of fun, Jiwan muttered. They passed through another wave of impossible force. The Audacity's hull groaned, metal screaming under stress it was never designed to handle. Jiwan rerouted power from life support to the shields. She could breathe recycled air for a while. Staying alive required working shields. On the observation screens, the three ships had become barely visible through the energy distortions. They looked like ghosts, half real, flickering between existence and nothing. We've lost direct communication, Somin An reported from the control station. She and Tai Yang were monitoring everything they could from outside the rift. They're on their own now. Hyejin nodded, her face calm despite the fear churning in her stomach. She had sent her friends into that nightmare. If they died, it would be because she had authorized this plan. Quinta stood beside her, feathers trembling. They are still alive. How are they still alive? Because they're stubborn, Hyejin said. And because they're very, very good at not dying when they should. Inside the rift, Minji was starting to see patterns in the chaos. His mind was built for finding connections, for seeing order in randomness. The rift was not random. It was complex, but it had rules. Strange rules, wrong rules, but rules nonetheless. Guys, I've got something, he said. The core is generating a pulse sequence. Every 7.3 seconds, there's a gap in the antimatter wave. If we time it right, we can ride that gap all the way to the center. 7.3 seconds? Doyen asked. That's incredibly specific. Are you sure? No, I'm guessing wildly while flying through a reality-eating nightmare. Yes, I'm sure. Good enough for me. Jiwan, you copy that? Copied, Jiwan said. But 7.3 seconds is not much time for margin of error. Then we won't make any errors. Adjusting course to Vector 179er. On my mark, we go full throttle for the core. The three ships adjusted their positions, forming a tight triangle. They were barely holding together now. The Tenacity's hull showed cracks. The Audacity's engines were running on emergency power. The Mendacity had lost its portside shield generator entirely, but they were close, so close to the center of the rift. Doyen counted down. 3, 2, 1 mark. Three ships accelerated as one, diving toward the heart of the anomaly. The rift's core loomed before them, a singularity of condensed anti-reality. It looked like a wound in space, bleeding energy that unmade everything it touched. Deploying payload, Jiwan shouted. All three ships released their modified reactor cores. The cores drifted toward the singularity, their programming activating. They began to pulse in the specific rhythm that the humans had calculated, a pattern designed to create a recursive feedback loop. The rift's core consumed the reactors as it consumed everything. But these reactors were different. They were not fuel. They were poison. The singularity began to pulse. Slowly at first, then faster. The recursive loop was starting. The rift was beginning to feed on its own energy. On every observation screen across the galaxy, scientists watched in amazement as the impossible happened. The void rift began to shrink. It's working, Pelcrow said, his energy form brightening with joy. By all the ancient stars, it's actually working. Morden gripped the railing of the observation deck. Order them to retreat. They have succeeded. They must escape before the final collapse. Hyejin opened the communication channel. All ships, this is control. You've done it. The rift is collapsing. Begin your escape sequence. Static came through the speakers. Then Doyen's voice, distorted but recognizable. Control, we have a problem. The joy in the observation ship died instantly. What problem? Heijin asked, her voice steady despite the ice in her veins. The collapse is accelerating faster than we calculated. A lot faster. We're not going to make it out before the event horizon closes. Inside the mendacity, Minji was running calculations frantically. Numbers scrolled across his screens, each one worse than the last. Projected collapse in 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Our maximum speed gets us clear in 5 minutes, 8 seconds. We're 48 seconds short. Can we go faster? Jiwan asked. Not without the engines exploding, which would kill us about 4 minutes, 20 seconds sooner than the rift collapse. So no. Doyen stared at his screens, at the collapsing rift behind them, at the escape trajectory that was just barely too slow. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy, and they were going to die for it. Well, he said quietly, at least it worked. On the observation deck, beings from 1,000 species watched 3 human ships trying to outrace death. Some prayed to their gods, some wept, some simply stared in helpless horror. Yijin stood perfectly still, her mind racing. There had to be a way. There was always a way. Humans did not come this far just to fail at the end. Quinta looked at her. I am sorry. Your people were very brave. They're not dead yet, Yijin said firmly. And humans don't believe in no-win scenarios. She opened channels to Soman and Taeyang. Tell me we have options. Soman's voice came through, tight with stress. We're working on it. Just need a miracle. A small one. Any size miracle would be helpful right now. The void rift collapsed inward like a dying star, shrinking second by second. Purple-black energy swirled and twisted as the recursive loop consumed the anomaly from within. Across the galaxy, sensors showed star systems emerging from the rift's shadow, safe for the first time in months. But 3 human ships were still inside. In the control room, Soman An's fingers flew across multiple keyboards. Numbers scrolled past faster than most beings could read. Beside her, Taeyang Seo was pulling up schematics of every ship in the observation fleet, looking for anything they could use. Talk to me, Yijin said over the open channel. What are our options? Bad and worse, Soman replied, her voice tight. The collapse is accelerating exponentially. Even if we could reach them, any ship entering the rift now would be destroyed instantly. Taeyang brought up a new display. Wait, what if we don't go in? What if we pull them out? With what? Soman asked. The Council's tractor beams can't reach that far. The energy interference is too strong. Not one tractor beam, all of them. Every ship in the fleet synchronized to create a resonance pattern. Soman stared at the calculations appearing on her screen. That's never been done. The timing would have to be perfect across hundreds of ships. One mistake and the interference would tear our people apart instead of pulling them out. So we don't make mistakes. Taeyang looked at Hyejin. It's possible, barely, but possible. Hyejin turned to High Chancellor Mordan. We need every ship in the fleet to coordinate their tractor beams. Right now. Mordan's scales shifted colors rapidly. That is an untested theory. We could make things worse. They're already dying. We have to try something. The risk to the fleet is nothing compared to what those 3 just risked for all of you. Hyejin's calm facade cracked, showing the fear and desperation beneath. They flew into that nightmare to save the galaxy. The least we can do is try to save them. Mordan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is the High Chancellor. Configure your tractor beams to the following frequency. Prepare to synchronize on my command. Inside the rift, Doyen fought with his controls as space continued to collapse around them. The tenacity shook violently, hull plates grinding against each other. Warning sirens screamed from every direction. Engine 2 is gone, he reported, his voice somehow still calm, compensating with thrusters. How are you 2 doing? Audacity has lost half the shield generators, Jiwan said. Through her cockpit window she could see cracks spreading across the hull. But we're still moving. That's something. Mendacity is about 10 seconds from complete structural failure, Minjae added. But it's been a good 10 seconds. Doyen almost laughed. Even now, facing certain death, his friends were making jokes. That was the human way. If you were going to die, you might as well die with style. For what it's worth, he said, this was a pretty good plan. We did save the galaxy. Best plan we ever had, Jiwan agreed. Definitely in the top 5, Minjae said. They flew in silence for a moment, 3 friends racing against impossible odds. The rift's event horizon was closing behind them, a wall of annihilation catching up second by second. Then Soman's voice crackled through the static. Tenacity, audacity, mendacity, do not adjust your course. We're trying something. It's going to get rough. Rougher than flying through a collapsing spatial anomaly? Doyen asked. Significantly rougher. Trust us? Always have. Always will. Outside the rift, hundreds of ships adjusted their positions. Tractor beam emitters powered up across the fleet. In the control room, Soman and Taiyang worked frantically to coordinate timing across different species technology. Every ship had different systems, different response times, different calibrations. This is impossible, Pelcross said, watching the coordination efforts. There are too many variables. Too many differences between our technologies. Impossible is just a word humans use for things we haven't figured out yet. Taiyang muttered, adjusting frequencies. Soman, adjust the Chitauri ships by 0.7 seconds. Their systems run slower, already on it. Luminary ships need to boost their output by 30%. Their emitters cannot handle 30%. Then they'll have to handle it anyway. Morden watched the preparations with growing concern. Even if the coordination works, the energy surge could damage half the fleet. Then we'll fix the fleet afterward, Yijin said firmly. Execute the plan. Morden took a deep breath and opened the fleet channel. All ships on my mark. 3, 2, 1, activate. Hundreds of tractor beams fired at once, their energy synchronized to a single frequency. The combined force created a tunnel through the rift's energy field, a pathway of stabilized space reaching toward the 3 human ships. But the coordination was not perfect. Some ships fired too early, others too late. The tunnel flickered and destabilized. Adjusting harmonics, Soman shouted. Her fingers moved faster than thought across the controls, compensating in real time for every variance. Taiyang, boost the port side quadrant. Boosting. We're getting interference from the crystalline ships. Their energy matrices don't sync properly. Then desync them and bring them back in on the counter rhythm. Make them the offbeat instead of fighting the main beat. Taiyang's eyes widened. That's insane. That's not how tractor beams work. It is now. Do it, he did it. The crystalline ship's beams shifted to a counter rhythm, and suddenly the interference became reinforcement. The tunnel stabilized, reaching deeper into the collapsing rift. Inside the tenacity, Doyen felt something grab his ship. Not a gentle pull, but a violent yank that threatened to tear the vessel apart. What the? We're being pulled. Control has a plan, Jiwan shouted over the sound of metal screaming. Just hold together a little longer. Minjae watched his instruments spike into impossible readings. There's a stable corridor opening ahead. It's rough, but it's there. Doyen saw it too. A tunnel of relatively calm space cutting through the chaos. He adjusted course, aiming for the center. All ships into the corridor. This is going to be close. The 3 ships accelerated into the tunnel. Behind them, the event horizon rushed forward, collapsing faster and faster. The tunnel began to shrink as the rift consumed itself. We're not going to make it. Minjae's ship was falling behind, its damaged engines unable to keep pace. Yes, we are. Jiwan pushed her engines past every safety limit. The Audacity shot forward, pulling alongside the Mendacity. Minjae, match my trajectory. I'm going to use my momentum to push you forward. That'll destabilize both our ships. Then we'll be unstable together. Do it. The Audacity and Mendacity flew wing to wing, their hull plates actually touching. It was insane flying. The kind of maneuver that should have sent both ships spinning out of control. But Jiwan held steady, using her ship's remaining speed to drag Minjae forward. Doyen flew ahead, blazing the path. The tunnel was collapsing around them. He could see the exit now, a point of normal space growing closer. Almost there. 10 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds. Saman's voice was desperate. The rift's final collapse is starting. 7 seconds until the event horizon reaches you. Then we'd better be fast. Doyen pushed his dying engines to their absolute limit. The Tenacity screamed in protest but obeyed. Behind him, Jiwan and Minjae flew an impossible tandem, 2 ships acting as one. The Audacity's engines finally gave out, but their momentum carried both ships forward. 5 seconds. The tunnel collapsed to half its size. 4 seconds. Doyen shot through the exit into normal space. His engines exploded the moment he cleared the rift, but he was through. 3 seconds, Jiwan and Minjae tumbled through the exit together, their ships separating and spinning wildly. But they were clear. 2 seconds. The tractor beam tunnel collapsed. 1 second. The void rift imploded completely, condensing down to a point of light before disappearing entirely. The space where it had been was empty, clean, normal. The 3 human ships drifted in the void, battered and broken and barely holding together, but intact, and their crews were alive. For a long moment, nobody spoke. On observation screens across the galaxy, billions of beings stared in disbelief. Then Doyen's voice came through the communicator, weaker than before, but still recognizably him. "Control, this is Tenacity. Mission accomplished. Also, we're going to need a tow. Possibly 3 tows. And some duct tape, a lot of duct tape." The observation ship erupted in cheers. Beings from 1,000 species celebrated together, crying and laughing and embracing. The galaxy had been saved. And against every prediction, the humans had survived. Yejin closed her eyes, relief washing over her in waves. "Good work, everyone. We're sending recovery ships now." "Thanks," Doyen said. "Oh, and Yejin. Next time someone says something's impossible, maybe believe us when we say we can do it anyway. I never doubted you for a second." "Liar," Doyen said, but she could hear the smile in his voice. Quinta stood beside Hyejin, her feathers trembling. "They did it. They actually did it." "Of course they did," Hyejin said quietly. "That's what humans do. We solve problems. Even the impossible ones, especially the impossible ones." 1 week after the void rift collapsed, the Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from every known species filled the room and spilled into the corridors beyond. News feeds broadcast the session to thousands of worlds. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened. The 3 damaged human ships sat in repair docks, being studied by scientists from hundreds of civilizations. The modifications the humans had made were being analyzed, documented, and debated. Some called them genius, others called them reckless. Most called them both. High Chancellor Mordan stood at the central podium, his scales a steady blue that indicated calm authority. Beside him stood the 5 humans who had saved the galaxy. Ji-Won Kim, Doyen Park, and Min-Jae Choi looked tired but satisfied. So-Min-An and Taeyang Seo stood with them, having been recognized for their critical role in the rescue, but it was Hyejin Lee who stepped forward to address the council. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice clear and steady. "You have asked us to explain how humanity solved a problem that defeated civilizations millions of years old. The answer is both simple and complicated." Ambassador Vexisthar leaned forward, his compound eyes fixed on her. "Please enlighten us. Our scientists have studied your methods for a week and still do not fully understand." Hyejin nodded. "That's because you're trying to understand it through the lens of your own experience. You're asking how did their technology work, when you should be asking why did their approach work." Dr. Pelcross's energy form flickered with curiosity. "What is the difference?" "Technology is just tools," Ji-Won said, stepping up beside Hyejin. "Our tools weren't better than yours. In most ways they were worse, simpler, more primitive." "Then how?" a delegate from the Crystalline Collective asked, her voice chiming with confusion. Min-Jae smiled slightly. "Because we didn't know we were supposed to fail. You knew too much. You had millions of years of accumulated knowledge telling you what was impossible. We only had 50 years of galactic experience. We didn't know all the rules we were breaking." A murmur went through the chamber. Some delegates looked offended. Others looked thoughtful. Morden raised a clawed hand for silence. "Are you saying that ignorance is superior to knowledge?" "Not ignorance," Hyejin clarified. "Fresh perspective. You spent 3 months trying to contain the rift using established physics. Every approach you tried had been proven to work in similar situations. But this situation wasn't similar. It was unique. We spent 3 days ignoring established physics to find what actually worked," Doyen added. He was leaning casually against the podium, still managing to look relaxed even in front of the entire galaxy. "We didn't have previous experience telling us what wouldn't work, so we just tried everything. But that is inefficient," protested a delegate. "Testing random solutions wastes time and resources." "Is it more inefficient than spending 3 months on solutions that definitely don't work?" Soman asked quietly. "You calculated the risks and determined success was impossible." "We calculated the risks and decided to try anyway." Taeyang pulled up holographic displays showing the modifications they had made to the ships. "Look at our approach. We used old technology in new ways. We combined methods that you'd never think to combine because they come from different theoretical frameworks. We didn't optimize for elegance or efficiency. We optimize for does it work? Your reactor modifications violate 3 fundamental principles of energy conservation, Pelcross observed. They don't violate them, Jiwan said. They go around them. There's a difference. Conservation of energy is a law of physics, but laws can have loopholes if you're creative enough. Quinta stood from her seat, her feathers ruffling. I observed the humans' entire process. What struck me most was not their technology, but their attitude. They treated an extinction-level crisis like a problem to solve, not an enemy to defeat. What is the difference? Someone asked. An enemy must be fought with force, Quinta explained. A problem must be understood and dismantled. The humans approached the rift with curiosity rather than fear. They asked, what is it doing? Instead of, how do we stop it? That shift in perspective changed everything. Heijin nodded. Exactly. You tried to push against the rift. We asked why it was expanding and then used its own nature against it. You saw an enemy. We saw a puzzle. But you risked your lives on an untested theory, Morden said. That seems incredibly reckless, Doyen shrugged. Staying safe while the galaxy died seemed more reckless. At least our way had a chance. You could have died for nothing, or we could have died for everything, Minjay said. Humans are pretty comfortable with that trade-off. We've been making it for thousands of years. A long silence filled the chamber. Delegates looked at each other, at the humans, at the data showing how the impossible had become possible. Finally, Ambassador Vexthar spoke. We feared your species was too primitive to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. We thought you needed centuries of advancement before you would be equals. And now? Heijin asked. Now we realize that your primitiveness was exactly what we needed. Your lack of ancient wisdom freed you to think differently. While we were constrained by millions of years of, this is how things work, you were free to ask, but what if they worked differently? Another delegate stood, this one from the Ursinian Commonwealth. Your approach to problems is chaotic. You argue among yourselves. You try solutions that should fail. You take enormous risks. This goes against everything we have learned about proper methodology. Maybe proper methodology isn't always the right tool, Soman suggested. Sometimes you need improper methodology. Sometimes you need chaos and arguments and risks. You make it sound like mistakes are valuable, the delegate said. They are, Jiwan said firmly. Humans make mistakes constantly. We fail more than we succeed. But every failure teaches us something. We've built our entire civilization on learning from failures. Taeyang brought up historical records from Earth. Look at human history. We've had countless failed governments, failed technologies, failed ideas. Each one taught us something. Our greatest advances came from people who tried things that everyone said were impossible. Flight was impossible until we made it possible, Doyen added. Space travel was impossible until we did it. Breaking the sound barrier was impossible until it wasn't. Every major advance in human history started with someone saying, they say it can't be done, so let's try it anyway. Morden studied the humans carefully. Your species has a saying that observer Quinta reported. Relax, we've got this. You say this even when facing impossible situations? Why? Doyen smiled. Because if we don't believe we can handle it, we won't even try. Confidence isn't about knowing you'll succeed. It's about being willing to try even when success seems impossible. That is not logical, Pelcross observed. No, Heijin agreed. It's not. It's very human, though. We don't always operate on pure logic. Sometimes we operate on hope, stubbornness, and the belief that there has to be a way even when all evidence says there isn't. Another murmur went through the chamber, longer this time. The delegates were beginning to understand something that had never occurred to them before. Logic and knowledge and ancient wisdom were valuable, but they had limitations. Sometimes you needed illogical, inexperienced beings willing to try the impossible. Morden conferred quietly with other council leaders. Then he turned back to the humans. The Galactic Council would like to make a proposal. We wish to establish a new initiative. The Human Problem-Solving Initiative. What would that involve? Heijin asked. Whenever the galaxy faces a crisis that conventional methods cannot solve, humanity would be consulted, not as a last resort but as a first option. Your unique perspective would be considered valuable rather than primitive. Vexthar stood. I support this proposal. The humans have proven they can see solutions where others see only impossibility. That is a rare gift. Other delegates stood, voicing their agreement. The proposal passed unanimously, something that rarely happened in the council. Hyejin looked at her fellow humans. They had come to this galaxy as newcomers, barely tolerated by ancient civilizations. Now they were being recognized as essential members of the galactic community. "We accept," she said, "but you should know that our solutions will probably involve improvisation, taking risks and using technology in ways it was never intended to be used. We're not going to suddenly start following all the proper procedures." "We would not want you to," Morden said, and there was something like amusement in his voice. "You are most effective when you are most human. We will accept the duct tape and coffee and casual attitudes if they come with results like we just witnessed." "Just one condition," Doyen said. "When we tell you we've got something handled, try to believe us. At least a little bit." "After what we just witnessed, I believe the entire galaxy will believe you," Bexthar said. The council session ended with something unprecedented. Delegates from 1,000 species stood and applauded the 5 humans. Not polite applause, but genuine celebration. The galaxy had learned something important. As the humans left the chamber, Quinta caught up with them. "You changed everything today. The galaxy will never look at problems the same way again."